Part 1: 12 Lost Cities. That rewrite human history beneath the jungles of Cambodia, a city larger than Los Angeles, lay hidden for 600 years. When archaeologists finally mapped it using laser technology in 2015, they discovered something that shouldn't exist. A metropolis of over 1 million people with hydraulic engineering so advanced that modern engineers are still trying to figure out how it worked. This wasn't supposed to be possible in the 12th century, but Angkor wasn't alone. 12 cities, scattered across 5 continents, challenge everything we think we know about human civilization. Not because they're old, though some are impossibly ancient. Not because they're large, though several dwarf modern capitals. These cities break the rules because they demonstrate capabilities that appeared centuries, sometimes millennia, before history says they should have existed. Advanced metallurgy before the Bronze Age. Precision stone cutting that modern tools struggle to replicate. Urban planning that wouldn't be matched until the Industrial Revolution. The archaeological establishment has spent decades trying to fit these discoveries into comfortable timelines, but the evidence keeps refusing to cooperate. Let's start in Turkey, where the oldest city ever discovered forces us to reconsider when civilization actually began. Çatalhöyük sits on the Konya Plain in southern Turkey, and when British archaeologist James Mellart excavated it in 1958, he thought he'd made a mistake with the dating. The radiocarbon results kept coming back impossibly old, 7,500 to 5,700 BCE. That placed this city's founding at 9,500 years ago, during a period when humans were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers living in small bands, occasionally painting on cave walls. Instead, Mellart found a thriving urban centre of up to 10,000 people, living in sophisticated multi-storey houses plastered with elaborate murals. The city covered 34 acres with no streets. People walked across flat rooftops and entered homes through ladders descending from ceiling hatches. Why? Nobody knows for certain, but the design suggests serious concerns about defence or perhaps a radically different concept of public versus private space. The artwork inside these homes is what keeps archaeologists arguing. Walls feature hunting scenes with detail that suggests ceremonial importance, geometric patterns that might represent textiles or tattoos, and repeated symbols that could indicate early writing systems. One chamber contained a bull's head installation with actual cattle horns mounted on sculpted heads protruding from the wall. Dozens of them. The room served some ritual function, but its exact purpose remains debated. Here's what makes Çatalhöyük genuinely revolutionary. The inhabitants practiced sophisticated agriculture, cultivated at least 14 plant species, and domesticated sheep and cattle. They created obsidian tools with edges sharper than modern surgical scalpels. Chemical analysis of residues shows they produced textiles, worked leather, and created pottery. This wasn't a primitive settlement. This was a complex urban society with division of labour, specialised craftspeople, and trade networks extending hundreds of miles. The real mystery. There's no gradual progression to this sophistication. The earliest levels show the same complexity as later ones. It's as if these people arrived with a complete package of urban living skills already developed. Where did they come from? What earlier settlements taught them these techniques? We haven't found them. Recent excavations using ground-penetrating radar suggest the city is far larger than originally mapped. Entire neighbourhoods remain buried, potentially holding answers to questions we haven't thought to ask yet. From Turkey's ancient plains, we travel to Peru's coastal desert, where another impossible city emerged from sand that preserved it for 4 millennia. Caral sits in the Supe Valley, 120 miles north of Lima. It was discovered in 1948 but largely ignored until Peruvian archaeologist Ruth Shady began serious excavations in 1994. The radiocarbon dates shocked the archaeological community, 2600 BCE. That makes Caral contemporary with the Egyptian pyramids and older than any other city in the Americas by 1,500 years. The city covers 165 acres with 6 large platform mounds, the largest rising 60 feet high and measuring 500 feet by 450 feet at the base. These aren't crude earthworks. They're sophisticated architectural achievements with multiple levels, ceremonial plazas, and residential complexes. The construction used shikra bags, mesh bags filled with stones, as structural fill. Thousands of them. It's an earthquake-resistant technique that modern Peruvian builders have only recently rediscovered. What's absent from Corral is as significant as what's present. No weapons, no fortifications, no evidence of warfare. For a city that thrived for over 1,000 years in a region that would later see constant conflict, this piece is bizarre. The inhabitants seem focused on trade, music, and astronomy. Archaeologists recovered 32 flutes made from condor and pelican bones, tuned to specific scales. Why flutes? What music did they play? The instruments suggest ceremonial gatherings, possibly religious rituals involving sound. The city's layout demonstrates advanced astronomical knowledge. Structures align with solstice positions. Plazas are oriented to track solar and lunar cycles. This wasn't decorative. Agricultural societies need accurate calendars, and Corral's builders achieved precision that required generations of careful observation. Trade networks extended to the Amazon rainforest, the Andean highlands, and coastal regions hundreds of miles away. Excavations revealed exotic goods, colourful feathers from jungle birds, spondylus shells from Ecuador's warm waters, and coca leaves from mountain valleys. Corral was a hub connecting diverse ecological zones, exchanging goods and possibly ideas across vast distances. The irrigation systems supporting Corral's agriculture were sophisticated enough to sustain thousands of people in a desert, receiving less than an inch of rain annually. They diverted rivers, built canals, and managed water with engineering knowledge that shouldn't exist in 2600 BCE, according to conventional development timelines. Then, around 1600 BCE, Corral was abandoned, not destroyed by conquest or natural disaster, just quietly depopulated. Why? Climate change is the leading theory. A prolonged drought may have disrupted the agricultural systems supporting the city, but the people didn't vanish. They migrated, carrying their knowledge to new regions, seeding later Andean civilizations with techniques developed at Corral. The question archaeologists wrestle with is where Corral's founders learned their urban planning and engineering skills. There's no evidence of predecessor settlements developing these capabilities gradually. Corral appears fully formed, suggesting either rapid innovation or inheritance from an even earlier, as yet undiscovered culture. Now we shift continents entirely, heading to Pakistan, where a civilization emerged that might have been more advanced than its famous contemporaries in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Mohenjo-Daro sits in Pakistan's Sindh province, part of the Indus Valley civilization that flourished from approximately 2500 to 1900 BCE. British archaeologist John Marshall began excavations in the 1920s, expecting another Mesopotamian-style city with temples, palaces, and obvious hierarchies. What he found defied every assumption about ancient urban development. The city was planned on a precise grid system with streets intersecting at perfect right angles. Main avenues ran exactly north-south and east-west. Blocks were uniform in size. This level of urban planning wouldn't appear in Europe for another 3,000 years, but the real engineering marvel was underground. Mohenjo-Daro possessed the world's first sophisticated municipal sanitation system. Every house connected to covered brick sewers running beneath the streets. Wastewater flowed to settling chambers outside the city. The sewers included manholes for maintenance access. Some homes had private bathrooms with sit-down toilets and bathing platforms. The Great Bath, a massive public bathing facility measuring 39 feet by 23 feet and 8 feet deep, was waterproofed with bitumen and featured a sophisticated drainage system. Let that sink in. While most ancient cities threw waste into streets or rivers, Mohenjo-Daro had indoor plumbing and city-wide sewage treatment. The engineering required detailed understanding of hydraulics, gradients for water flow, and materials science for waterproofing. Where did this knowledge originate? The city's buildings used standardized fired bricks in a precise ratio of 4 to 2 to 1 for length, width, and height. This standardization across the entire Indus Valley civilization, spanning hundreds of miles, suggests centralized planning or shared technical knowledge on a massive scale. The bricks themselves were fired at temperatures requiring sophisticated kiln technology. Perhaps most puzzling is what Mohenjo-Daro lacks. No temples, no palaces, no obvious rulers. The architecture suggests a surprisingly egalitarian society. Houses vary in size, but not dramatically. There's no residential district that screams wealth and power. No monuments glorifying kings or gods. The civilization possessed writing, but despite thousands of seals and inscriptions recovered, the Indus script remains undeciphered. We can't read their records, so their government structure, religious beliefs, and daily concerns remain mysterious. Trade networks connected Mohenjo-Daro to Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and possibly Egypt. Indus seals have been found in Mesopotamian cities, but unlike those civilizations, the Indus Valley people didn't build for eternity. They built for living. Their focus was practical infrastructure, public health and trade rather than monuments and conquest. Around 1900 BCE, Mohenjo-Daro declined rapidly. The reasons remain debated. Climate change and shifting river patterns probably played roles. Some evidence suggests the Indus River changed course, disrupting the agricultural foundation. But there's no sign of conquest or sudden catastrophe. The city was gradually abandoned as conditions deteriorated. What happened to the inhabitants? They dispersed, and their knowledge seemingly vanished. Later, Indian civilizations didn't inherit the Indus Valley's urban planning expertise. The sophisticated sanitation systems weren't replicated for millennia. It's as if an entire technological package was lost. These three cities, Çatalhöyük, Karal, and Mohenjo-Daro, represent just the beginning. Each one appeared with capabilities that challenge our comfortable narratives about gradual human progress. But they're not anomalies. They're part of a pattern that becomes more obvious as we examine the remaining 9 cities. What you're about to discover will force a fundamental question. If these civilizations possessed knowledge that supposedly didn't exist yet, where did it come from? Were there even earlier cultures we haven't found? Or did human innovation occur in sudden leaps rather than gradual climbs? The next city on our list emerged from dense jungle, where it had been hiding for centuries, and when archaeologists finally saw its full scope, they realized it rewrites everything we thought we understood about medieval urban development. Angkor. The year is 802 CE. You're standing in what will become the largest pre-industrial city on Earth, though right now it's just dense Cambodian jungle. Over the next 4 centuries, your descendants will build a metropolis covering 390 square miles. Manhattan, for comparison, is 23 square miles. But size isn't what makes Angkor impossible. It's the infrastructure hidden beneath the temples that everyone photographs. French naturalist Henri Mahaut stumbled across Angkor Wat in 1860, though local Khmer people obviously knew it existed. Western scholars assumed they'd found ruins of a moderately sized temple complex. They were wrong by an order of magnitude. The temples were just the ceremonial center. The actual city sprawled across an area larger than modern Los Angeles. Recent LiDAR surveys conducted between 2012 and 2015 revealed what archaeologists had missed for over a century. Beneath the jungle canopy lay the remains of the world's most sophisticated pre-industrial water management system. We're talking about a hydraulic city more complex than Rome's aqueducts. The Khmer Empire built an integrated network of canals, reservoirs and distribution systems that controlled water across hundreds of square miles. The West Barre Reservoir alone holds 13 billion gallons of water. It's a man-made lake measuring 5 miles long and 1.3 miles wide, hand-excavated from Earth. Moving that much dirt required organizing tens of thousands of workers with mathematical precision. But here's what baffles engineers. The system didn't just store water, it redistributed it across the landscape using gravity-fed networks that required calculating gradients across vast distances. The channels had to slope at precisely the right angle. Too steep and water erodes the channels. Too shallow and it stagnates. The Khmer engineers achieved optimal gradients across a system spanning nearly 400 square miles. They built this to solve a specific problem. Cambodia has intense monsoons followed by dry seasons. The challenge was capturing monsoon rainfall, storing it, and distributing it year-round to support intensive rice agriculture, feeding a population estimated at 750,000 people. That's more residents than medieval Paris or London. The temples everyone recognises, Angkor Wat and Bayon, were surrounded by a grid city with wooden houses, markets and neighbourhoods that have since rotted away. LiDAR revealed neighbourhood layouts, street grids and residential districts organised with urban planning principles. This wasn't a collection of villages clustered around temples, it was a designed metropolis. Angkor Wat itself demonstrates mathematical and astronomical knowledge that's hard to explain. The temple's dimensions encode lunar and solar calendrical systems. Distances between certain structures correspond to lengths of cosmic time periods in Hindu cosmology. The central tower aligns with the spring equinox. On that morning, the sun rises directly behind the tower when viewed from the entrance causeway. Was this luck? The builders somehow accidentally creating astronomical alignments while simultaneously engineering the largest religious structure in the world. The causeway leading to Angkor Wat stretches 200 metres and is perfectly aligned east-west. The temple's 5 towers represent Mount Meru, the centre of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology, but the precision suggests the builders possessed surveying instruments and mathematical knowledge far beyond what surviving records indicate. Then there's the infrastructure beneath the temples. Stone channels carved into bedrock directed water through the complex. The engineering required understanding hydraulic pressure, drainage, and preventing foundation erosion. These temples have survived centuries of monsoons because the drainage systems still function. Around 1431, Angkor was abandoned. Thai armies invaded, but that's not the full story. Recent research suggests the hydraulic system failed. Centuries of intensive use created sedimentation problems. Climate changes brought more extreme weather patterns. The system that made Angkor possible became unmanageable. Once the water infrastructure collapsed, the city couldn't sustain its population. What's haunting is how completely the knowledge vanished. Later Cambodian kingdoms built nothing comparable. The expertise required to create and maintain a 390 square mile hydraulic city was lost. When French archaeologists arrived in the 1860s, locals knew the temples existed, but had no memory of the sophisticated urban infrastructure buried beneath centuries of jungle growth. From Southeast Asia's flooded rice paddies, we travel to Africa's Sahara Desert. Only this time we're visiting when it wasn't a desert. Tassili N'Ajjer, southern Algeria. You're standing on a plateau surrounded by thousands of rock paintings. Some show people swimming. Others depict hippos, crocodiles and lush vegetation. The paintings date from 12,000 to 6,000 years ago. But this is the Sahara Desert, one of Earth's driest places. What were these ancient artists seeing? They were documenting reality. Between roughly 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara wasn't a desert. It was green. Tassili N'Ajjer, a plateau covering 28,000 square miles, contains over 15,000 rock art images spanning 6,000 years of continuous human habitation during the African humid period. The paintings show cattle herding, suggesting pastoralism developed in North Africa independently of Middle Eastern developments. Some images depict boats, implying lakes or rivers substantial enough for watercraft. Archaeological evidence confirms this. Ancient lake beds dot the Sahara. Fossilized remains of Nile perch have been found hundreds of miles from the modern Nile River. During the African humid period, shifted monsoon patterns brought summer rains to North Africa. The Sahara supported grasslands, acacia woodlands, and interconnected lakes and rivers. Humans established settlements and developed sophisticated societies in regions now buried under sand dunes. But some Tassili rock art raises uncomfortable questions. Certain paintings appear to show figures wearing what look like helmets or spherical headgear. Others depict beings with unusual proportions. Mainstream archaeologists interpret these as shamanic or religious imagery, representations of gods or spirits rather than literal depictions. Yet the artistic tradition at Tassili is otherwise remarkably naturalistic. Animals are rendered with anatomical accuracy. Hunting scenes show realistic human proportions and movements. Why would artists suddenly switch to stylized figures only for certain subjects? One painting, dubbed The Great Martian God by researchers in the 1950s, shows a large figure with a round head and what appears to be antenna-like protrusions. Surrounding it are smaller human figures. The conventional interpretation is that this represents a deity or spiritual being from the culture's mythology. But here's what's strange. Similar artistic motifs appear in rock art across vast distances. Southern Algeria, Libya, Egypt. Separated by hundreds of miles, these cultures produced eerily similar imagery during overlapping time periods. Was this cultural exchange across the Green Sahara? Or does it suggest something else? Around 5,000 years ago, the African humid period ended. Monsoon patterns shifted south. The Sahara rapidly desertified. Within centuries, the green landscape transformed into the desert we know today. The people who'd lived there for millennia were forced to migrate. Many moved to the Nile Valley, possibly contributing to the population that would eventually build Egyptian civilization. The knowledge and cultural traditions of Green Sahara civilizations largely vanished. What survived was fragmentary. Rock art preserved in remote plateau regions, scattered archaeological sites buried beneath advancing sand dunes. The transition was so rapid that later civilizations had no memory of the Sahara being anything other than desert. What happened to the astronomical knowledge these people might have possessed? The Tassili art includes possible star maps and celestial alignments. Some stone circles in the Sahara align with solstices and equinoxes. When the desert consumed these sites, did it also bury sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics? From Africa's vanished green landscape, we travel to Peru's coast, where another civilization built something that shouldn't exist. Chan Chan, northern Peru. You're walking through the largest adobe city ever constructed. Covering 8 square miles, Chan Chan was the capital of the Chimu Empire, which controlled 600 miles of Pacific coastline from 900 to 1470 CE. The city housed an estimated 60,000 people at its peak, but adobe melts in rain. Peru's northern coast is one of Earth's driest regions, receiving less than an inch of rain annually. The Chimu chose this location specifically because adobe architecture works in desert conditions. What's impossible is the infrastructure that supported 60,000 people in a desert. The Chimu engineered a hydraulic system that transported water from rivers in the Andes Mountains across dozens of miles of desert, using canals and aqueducts. The La Cumbre Canal stretched over 50 miles, one of the longest pre-Columbian canals in South America. It required calculating precise gradients across mountainous terrain to maintain flow without erosion. Chan Chan's interior contained ciudadelas, walled palace compounds housing Chimu royalty and administrators. Each ciudadela functioned as a self-contained city within the city, with wells, storage facilities, and burial platforms. The walls reached 30 feet high, decorated with intricate friezes showing fish, birds, and geometric patterns. The Chimu were master metallurgists. They produced bronze tools and weapons, created intricate gold and silver work, and developed arsenical bronze alloys. Their metallurgical knowledge rivaled anything produced in the Old World at the same time. Where did this expertise originate? Unlike the Inca who conquered them, the Chimu kept detailed records using quipus, knotted string systems, encoding numerical and possibly linguistic information. Unfortunately, Spanish conquistadors destroyed most quipus, considering them pagan. The few surviving examples show sophisticated mathematical encoding, but without a Rosetta Stone, we can't fully decipher them. When the Inca conquered Chan Chan in 1470, they absorbed Chimu knowledge. Many Chimu craftsmen and engineers were relocated to Cusco to serve Inca rulers. The Inca's own engineering achievements may have been built on Chimu foundations, but the Spanish conquest in 1532 severed that knowledge transfer. Chan Chan was abandoned. Desert winds eroded the adobe walls. By the time archaeologists began serious study in the 20th century, much had deteriorated. What remains shows a civilization that mastered desert urban planning, created sophisticated hydraulic systems, and developed metallurgy independently of Old World contact. These cities reveal a pattern, advanced capabilities appearing without clear precedent, knowledge that seems to emerge fully formed rather than developing gradually, infrastructure requiring mathematical and engineering sophistication that supposedly didn't exist yet. And we're only halfway through this list. The remaining cities will challenge everything you thought you understood about ancient capabilities, isolated development, and the linear progression of human knowledge. Because what comes next isn't just advanced for its time, it's advanced for any time. Derinkuyu, Central Turkey, Cappadocia region. You're descending a narrow tunnel carved through volcanic rock. 1 level down, 2, 3. The air grows cooler. 4 levels, 5. You're now 280 feet underground and you're standing in a city. Not a cave system, not a series of tunnels. A city with 18 stories extending into the earth, complete with ventilation shafts, wells, wine presses, stables, schools and communal rooms. Derinkuyu could shelter 20,000 people underground for months at a time. The question no one can answer is why anyone would build this. The official discovery happened in 1963 when a local resident knocked down a wall during home renovations and found a room. Then another room. Then a tunnel leading to more rooms. Archaeological investigation revealed an underground complex covering approximately 4 square miles with 18 accessible levels. Deeper levels likely exist, but remain blocked by debris. Each level could be sealed from the inside using massive circular stone doors, weighing up to 1,000 pounds. These doors rolled into place, blocking tunnels completely. Small holes in the center allowed defenders to stab through with spears. The design shows this wasn't a hiding place. It was a fortress. The ventilation system is what separates Derinkuyu from simple cave dwelling. 52 ventilation shafts penetrate from the surface down to the lowest levels, each shaft precisely angled to provide airflow without creating weak points for invasion. The deepest shaft reaches 180 feet, ensuring even the bottom levels received fresh air. Engineering this required understanding fluid dynamics and pressure differential. You can't accidentally create a system that keeps 20,000 people breathing underground. Water came from underground wells tapping aquifers deep below the city. The wells were inaccessible from the surface, preventing enemies from poisoning the supply. Storage rooms held enough food for extended sieges. The wine presses and oil presses show inhabitants expected to live normally underground, not just survive. Mainstream archaeology dates Derinkuyu's major construction to the Byzantine period, roughly 7th to 8th century CE, when Christians fled Arab raids. But the Byzantines didn't excavate Derinkuyu, they expanded it. The lowest levels show tool marks and construction techniques consistent with much earlier work, possibly Phrygian, dating to 1200 to 700 BCE. Some researchers argue for even earlier origins, pointing to Bronze Age pottery fragments found in sealed chambers. Here's what doesn't make sense. Excavating millions of cubic feet of volcanic rock using Bronze Age or early Iron Age tools should have taken centuries. Where's the debris? Moving that much stone would have created mountains of rubble. The area around Derinkuyu shows no evidence of massive ancient quarry operations. Either the debris was transported far away, which seems unlikely given the volume, or the excavation happened differently than we understand. More than 200 underground cities exist in Cappadocia. Derinkuyu is the largest excavated so far, but Kaymakli, Ozkanak and Mazi are nearly as extensive. Some connect via tunnels stretching miles underground. This wasn't one community digging a shelter. This was regional infrastructure on a massive scale. Why build underground? Byzantine Christians fleeing persecution is the standard answer. But persecution doesn't explain 18 stories, it doesn't explain cities connected by miles of tunnels, and it definitely doesn't explain the earliest levels predating Christianity by more than a millennium. Alternative theories suggest climate catastrophe, perhaps a period of extreme surface conditions, volcanic winters, or prolonged warfare forced populations underground. The Phrygians inhabited Anatolia during the Late Bronze Age collapse, when civilizations across the Mediterranean disintegrated. Could underground cities represent survival strategy during that chaos? Others point to the Book of Revelation's descriptions of people hiding in caves and rocks during apocalyptic events. Did ancient Anatolian cultures preserve memory of actual catastrophes that drove populations underground? Memory encoded in religious texts? The precision disturbs engineers. Tunnels align across multiple levels. Ventilation shafts maintain exact angles over hundreds of feet. The stone doors fit so perfectly that modern engineers struggle to replicate the tolerances using contemporary tools. This level of planning requires surveying, mathematical calculation, and coordination across generations. From Turkey's hidden depths, we travel to Cambodia, where a temple complex covers more area than any ancient city and contains astronomical alignments that shouldn't be possible. Angkor Wat, 12th century CE Cambodia. You're standing before the largest religious monument ever constructed, covering 400 acres. 5 towers rise like lotus buds, the central spire reaching 213 feet. Surrounded by a moat 650 feet wide, the entire complex represents Mount Meru, home of Hindu gods, with the moat as the cosmic ocean. But Angkor Wat is only the centerpiece. The greater Angkor region sprawls across 150 square miles, containing over 1,000 temples, hydraulic systems managing seasonal monsoons, and infrastructure supporting nearly 1 million inhabitants. At its peak in the 12th century, Angkor was the world's largest pre-industrial urban center. The temple's orientation is precise. The western entrance aligns perfectly with the spring equinox sunrise. The central tower aligns with the summer solstice. Internal galleries and corridors mark other astronomical events with accuracy matching modern observatories. Khmer architects encoded cosmological knowledge into stone. The bas-reliefs covering Angkor Wat's walls stretch over 3,000 feet, depicting Hindu epics, historical battles, and celestial beings. The craftsmanship shows standardized measurement systems and planning across decades. Individual stone blocks fit together with minimal mortar, creating structures that have survived 900 years of tropical climate, earthquakes, and jungle overgrowth. Angkor's hydraulic engineering rivals Roman aqueducts. The Khmer constructed massive reservoirs called bares, the largest measuring 4 miles by 1 mile. These weren't decorative. They captured monsoon rainfall, regulated flooding, and provided year-round irrigation, enabling multiple rice harvests. The West Baray alone held 48 billion gallons of water. How did the Khmer move stones weighing up to 8 tons each? Angkor Wat used over 5 million tons of sandstone quarried from Phnom Kulen Mountains, 25 miles away. Transporting and precisely placing millions of tons without wheels, without draft animals strong enough for those loads, without metal tools capable of shaping sandstone efficiently, shouldn't be possible using the technology attributed to 12th century Cambodia. The standard explanation relies on elephant power, log rollers, and massive labour forces coordinated by a powerful centralised state. The Khmer Empire controlled vast territories, collected taxes, and mobilised resources on scales matching any contemporary civilization. Given enough time and manpower, the argument goes, any engineering challenge becomes solvable. But time is the problem. Angkor Wat's main construction lasted only 30 years under Suryavarman II, 30 years to quarry, transport and precisely place 5 million tons of stone, while simultaneously carving thousands of feet of intricate bas-reliefs and ensuring astronomical alignments accurate to within minutes of arc. The math doesn't work unless the Khmer possessed organisational capabilities and construction techniques far beyond what's officially credited. The greater Angkor area shows even stranger features. LiDAR surveys conducted between 2012 and 2015 revealed extensive urban sprawl hidden beneath jungle canopy. Previously unknown temples, road networks and hydraulic systems emerged from the data. The city's true extent dwarfed previous estimates. Most intriguing, the LiDAR revealed geometric patterns in the landscape. Canals, roads, and temple placements form precise alignments and symmetries, visible only from above. The Khmer planned Angkor's layout using mathematical principles applied across dozens of square miles. This requires aerial perspective or sophisticated surveying techniques that supposedly didn't exist. When the Khmer Empire collapsed in the 15th century, Angkor was abandoned. Jungle consumed the temples. European explorers in the 19th century found ruins so extensive they initially believed them natural formations. Only systematic archaeology revealed the truth. An empire that dominated Southeast Asia for 600 years vanished so completely that its greatest city was forgotten. From Cambodia's jungle temples, we travel to Mexico, where another civilization built structures encoding mathematical constants that wouldn't be formalized for centuries. Teotihuacan, 100 BCE to 650 CE, Valley of Mexico. You're standing on the Avenue of the Dead, a 2.5-mile-long boulevard lined with pyramids and platforms. At the northern end rises the Pyramid of the Moon. To your east, the Pyramid of the Sun, third largest pyramid in the world, its base covering 730 feet per side. The entire city was planned as a single unit, its layout reflecting cosmological principles you're only beginning to understand. Teotihuacan housed 125,000 people at its peak, making it the sixth largest city in the world during its time. It wasn't Maya, it wasn't Aztec. The civilization that built it left no written records we can decipher. Even the name Teotihuacan is Aztec, given centuries after the city's abandonment. It means place where the gods were created. The Pyramid of the Sun's dimensions encode pi. The ratio between the pyramid's height and perimeter approximates pi with precision matching Egyptian pyramids. The structure's alignment deviates only 0.5 degrees from true north. Its orientation marks sunset on specific calendar dates tied to agricultural cycles. The Avenue of the Dead aligns 15.5 degrees east of north, matching the setting of the Pleiades constellation as visible from Teotihuacan during its construction period. The city's builders tracked stellar precession and incorporated it into urban planning. Underground beneath the Pyramid of the Sun, archaeologists discovered a tunnel system terminating in chambers shaped like four-petaled flowers. The symbolism matches creation myths across Mesoamerica, but the engineering required excavating tons of volcanic rock and ensuring structural stability under millions of tons of pyramid above. Teotihuacan's apartment compounds housed families in multi-room complexes with sophisticated drainage, interior courtyards, and murals. The city had running water, sewage systems, and urban planning matching Roman cities of the same period. Yet mainstream archaeology insists Mesoamerican civilizations developed independently without Old World contact. The murals depict deities, priests, and ritual activities. Some show figures wearing what appear to be breathing apparatus or helmets. Others depict celestial bodies and complex geometric patterns. Without written records, interpretation remains speculative. Around 650 CE, Teotihuacan burned. Archaeological evidence shows systematic destruction, not accidental fire. The city's core was deliberately torched. Statues were smashed, temples desecrated. Then the survivors left. Within a century, jungle and time erased most traces. When the Aztecs arrived 700 years later, they found ruins so ancient they believed gods built them. Who burned Teotihuacan? Why? Where did its people go? The answers died with them. From Mexico's abandoned metropolis, we travel to Peru, where another civilization vanished after building monuments that defy modern engineering capabilities. Sacsayhuaman, 1400 to 1500 CE, though some researchers argue construction began centuries earlier. You're standing before walls built from stones weighing up to 200 tons. No mortar binds them, yet you can't slide a knife blade between blocks. These aren't rectangular cuts, they're polygonal, each stone custom fitted to its neighbours in 3 dimensions like a jigsaw puzzle carved from bedrock. The Spanish conquistadors who first saw these walls believed giants built them. Modern engineers examining the precision admit they couldn't replicate it without computer-aided design and diamond-tipped tools. The largest stone at Sacsayhuaman weighs approximately 200 tons and required transport from a quarry 20 miles away across mountainous terrain at 12,000 feet elevation. The fitting precision between stones shows tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. Earthquake zones require flexible foundations. Sacsayhuaman's polygonal design creates interlocking stability. The stones actually move slightly during seismic events, then settle back into position. The fortress has survived 5 centuries of earthquakes that leveled Spanish colonial buildings constructed on top of Inca foundations. The Inca left no written language. Spanish chroniclers recorded oral traditions claiming the fortress was built by an earlier civilization called the Aymara, or by Viracocha, a god-king who taught stonework. The Inca themselves supposedly only maintained what they found. This explanation troubles archaeologists because it suggests technological regression. Why would the Inca, if they built Sacsayhuaman, later construct inferior stonework elsewhere? Mainstream archaeology dates Sacsayhuaman to the Inca Emperor Pachacuti around 1450 CE. The massive stones were supposedly moved using wooden rollers, ropes, and thousands of workers. The polygonal fitting was achieved through patient grinding and trial fitting over decades. Bronze tools and stone hammers were sufficient. It's impressive but not impossible, just extraordinarily labour-intensive. But bronze doesn't cut andesite efficiently. Experiments by engineers attempting to replicate Inca stonework using bronze tools and stone hammers produce crude results after months of effort. The precision at Sacsayhuaman requires either lost techniques involving unknown methods or technology we don't associate with pre-Columbian cultures. Some researchers propose thermal expansion techniques, using fire to crack stones along predetermined lines. Others suggest plant-based acids or mineral solutions that soften stone temporarily for carving. None have been conclusively demonstrated. The fortress faces Cusco across a valley. Inca cosmology viewed Cusco as the navel of the world, the center of their empire. Sacsayhuaman represented the head of a puma when viewed from above, with Cusco forming the body. This urban planning integrated religious symbolism with defensive architecture. When Francisco Pizarro conquered the Inca in 1533, Spanish soldiers dismantled much of Sacsayhuaman's stonework to build colonial Cusco. The largest blocks proved too heavy to move, so they remain. Who built the original foundation? What techniques did they use? Why can't modern engineering replicate the precision with available tools? From Peru's mountains, we return to the Mediterranean, where an island civilization vanished in a single day, leaving only legends and geological scars. Thera. 1600 BCE, Santorini Island, Greece. You're living on a volcanic island at the center of Minoan trade networks. Your city, Akrotiri, rises 3 stories tall with frescoes depicting ships, dolphins, and exotic landscapes. Sophisticated plumbing systems bring water to upper floors. Your civilization has written language, advanced metallurgy, and maritime trade routes spanning the Mediterranean. Then the mountain explodes. The Thera eruption was one of the largest volcanic events in human history. Volcanic Explosivity Index 7, comparable to Krakatoa, but more powerful. The eruption column reached 22 miles into the atmosphere. Pyroclastic flows incinerated everything within 20 miles. Tsunamis 50 feet high struck Crete 70 miles south. Ash fallout covered the eastern Mediterranean, disrupting climate for years. The island's center collapsed, creating a caldera 7 miles across filled by the sea. Akrotiri was preserved under volcanic ash like Pompeii. Excavations beginning in 1967 revealed multi-story buildings, advanced urban planning, and sophisticated art. No bodies were found. The residents evacuated before the catastrophic eruption, suggesting warning signs gave them time to flee. But where did they go? Minoan civilization on Crete declined sharply after Thera's eruption. Palaces burned. Trade networks collapsed. Within a century, Mycenaean Greeks from mainland Greece dominated Crete. Some researchers link Thera's destruction to the Atlantis legend. Plato described Atlantis as a powerful island civilization destroyed by earthquakes and floods in a single day and night. The timing, location, and catastrophic nature match Thera's eruption, but Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic, not the Aegean Sea. He described it as existing 9,000 years before his time, not 1,000 years. And the Atlantis connection remains controversial. Mainstream archaeology treats Atlantis as Plato's philosophical allegory, not historical record. Thera's eruption definitely occurred and definitely devastated Minoan civilization, but conflating it with Atlantis requires ignoring Plato's specific geographic and chronological claims. Yet the parallels are striking. A sophisticated island civilization destroyed catastrophically by natural disaster, leaving refugees who spread across the Mediterranean carrying stories of their lost homeland. Could Plato or his sources have confused details while preserving the core truth? Ice core samples from Greenland show sulfur dioxide spikes in 1628 BCE, matching Thera's eruption. Tree ring data from California bristlecone pines show growth disruption in 1627 BCE from volcanic winter effects. Chinese records mention unusual weather and failed harvests around the same period. Thera's eruption had global climate impacts, yet the civilization that bore the brunt vanished almost completely from history. We know them only through archaeology and fragmentary references in later Greek texts. From volcanic destruction, we travel to the Sahara Desert, where evidence of vanished rivers and ancient lakes tells a story mainstream history struggles to explain. The Green Sahara. 10,000 to 5,000 BCE. You're standing beside a river in what will one day be the world's largest desert. Grasslands stretch to the horizon. Elephants, giraffes and hippopotamus graze near permanent lakes. Your people have lived here for generations, fishing, hunting and painting images on rock walls that will survive millennia after the water disappears. The African humid period transformed the Sahara from 10,000 to 5,000 BCE. Orbital mechanics shifted African monsoons northward, bringing rainfall to regions that are desert today. The Sahara supported megafauna, human populations, and extensive river systems. Lake Chad covered 135,000 square miles, larger than the Caspian Sea. Rivers flowed through now barren landscapes. Archaeological evidence shows organized societies with pottery, agriculture, and permanent settlements. Tassili Nadja in Algeria contains over 15,000 petroglyphs and paintings. They depict cattle herding, dancing, hunting, and daily life. Some images show figures wearing round helmets or unusual headgear. Others depict floating objects or beings with features that spark alternative interpretations. Mainstream archaeology identifies them as shamanic or religious imagery. Alternative researchers see astronauts, flying craft, and evidence of contact with advanced visitors. Around 5000 BCE, the African humid period ended. Climate shifted rapidly. Monsoons retreated south, rivers dried, lakes evaporated. The Sahara became desert. Populations migrated to the Nile Valley, possibly contributing to the rise of Egyptian civilization. The rock art remains preserved by extreme aridity, showing a world that no longer exists. How quickly did the Sahara desiccate? Climate data suggests the transition occurred over centuries, not millennia. Populations had time to adapt and migrate, but entire ecosystems collapsed. The speed raises uncomfortable questions about climate stability. If the Sahara transformed from savanna to desert in a few centuries, what prevents similar rapid shifts elsewhere? From Africa's vanished rivers, we cross the Atlantic one final time to a site in North America that challenges assumptions about pre-Columbian civilization. Poverty Point, 1700 to 1100 BCE, Louisiana, United States. You're standing on an earthwork complex covering 900 acres. 6 concentric semicircular ridges rise from the landscape, each 4 to 6 feet tall and 150 feet wide. At the western edge, a mound rises 72 feet, the second largest earthwork in North America. Your society has no agriculture, no pottery, no permanent settlements. You're hunter-gatherers. Yet you've organized labor on a scale requiring coordination, planning, and social hierarchy that supposedly doesn't exist among mobile populations. Poverty Point was built between 1700 and 1100 BCE by pre-agricultural societies. The earthworks required moving 750,000 cubic yards of soil using basket loads. Construction would have demanded thousands of workers over decades. The site shows evidence of trade networks spanning 1,000 miles. Stone tools include materials from Ohio, Tennessee, and Arkansas. The civilization left no written records. We don't know their name or language. They vanished around 1100 BCE. The earthworks remained, slowly eroding until archaeological surveys in the 1950s recognized their significance. Why did hunter-gatherers build monumental earthworks? Mainstream archaeology struggles with this question because it contradicts the model where permanent architecture follows agriculture and settlement. Poverty Point suggests the causality runs both ways. Perhaps ritual gathering sites led to settlement, not the reverse. Perhaps the need to maintain and use these structures created social complexity that eventually developed into agriculture. The pattern repeats across millennia and continents. Göbekli Tepe built by hunter-gatherers. Poverty Point built by hunter-gatherers. Complex societies constructing permanent monuments before settling down, before farming, before everything we thought came first. The timeline we've been taught keeps breaking. Each discovery pushes complexity further back, revealing that our ancestors were far more capable than we credited. These aren't just archaeological curiosities. They're fractures in the historical narrative. Each site asks the same question. If they could do this, what else were they capable of? What else have we lost? The maps showed knowledge that shouldn't exist. The monuments demonstrate engineering we can't replicate. The sites reveal organization appearing too early. Taken individually, each can be explained away. Taken together, they form a pattern suggesting history's timeline has gaps we've filled with assumptions. Perhaps civilization doesn't follow a straight line from primitive to advanced. Perhaps it rises and falls in cycles we're only beginning to recognize. Perhaps we're not the first technological society on this planet, just the first to forget what came before. The stones don't lie. They simply wait for us to ask better questions. 12 cities, 5 continents, 10,000 years of human history that refuses to fit the timeline we've been taught. Each one breaks different rules. Çatalhöyük shouldn't be urban in 7,500 BCE. Corral shouldn't have monumental architecture without warfare. Mohenjo-Daro shouldn't have citywide plumbing in 2,500 BCE. Angkor shouldn't manage water across 400 square miles using pre-industrial technology. Derinkuyu shouldn't extend 18 stories underground with ventilation systems that still function. The engineering is too sophisticated, the planning too advanced, the knowledge appearing too early. The pattern isn't coincidence. These civilizations possessed capabilities that supposedly wouldn't exist for centuries or millennia. They built with precision we struggle to replicate. They organized labor on scales requiring social complexity that shouldn't exist yet. They encoded astronomical knowledge into stone monuments. They managed hydraulic systems spanning hundreds of miles. They created urban infrastructure matching or exceeding anything built until the Industrial Revolution. Then they vanished. Most left no written records explaining their techniques. The knowledge died with them. Later civilizations built atop the ruins, unable to duplicate what came before. The Romans couldn't move Baalbek's foundation stones. The Inca couldn't replicate Sacsayhuaman's precision. We can't explain Göbekli Tepe's sudden appearance or Poverty Point's monumental earthworks built by hunter-gatherers. History presents itself as linear progress from primitive to advanced. These cities reveal something different. Capability appearing suddenly, knowledge emerging fully formed, then disappearing completely, leaving only stones and questions. We assume we're the pinnacle of human achievement. These ruins suggest we might be standing on foundations we don't recognize, inheriting fragments of something larger that was lost. The archaeological establishment spends decades fitting discoveries into comfortable narratives, but the evidence keeps refusing to cooperate. Each excavation, each LiDAR survey, each new dating technique pushes complexity further back and reveals more sophistication than expected. The timeline fractures, the assumptions break, and we're left with stones that shouldn't exist, asking questions we're only beginning to formulate. What came before? What did we forget? And what else lies buried waiting to rewrite history again?